Hi, this is Zach from Worn & Wound, and today I'll be taking a look at the Tudor Black Bay 58. "2018 was a really big year for Tudor. While their big push at Baselworld was behind the Black Bay GMT, a watch that was met with tremendous excitement, it was another watch that stole the show. That watch, of course, was the Black Bay 58. This watch didn't have a new complication or even really a new design. It was just smaller, and a decent amount smaller too, dropping in diameter from 41 to 39, in lug-to-lug length from 50 to 47.75, in lug width from 22 to 20, and in height from 14.8 to 11.9 millimeters. While it's easy to focus on the diameter change to 39, it's really the height, lug width, and just overall reproportioning of the watch that made a huge difference. While the 41mm Black Bays are great, well-loved watches, they are on the large side of medium. They aren't oversized, and looking back at my wrist shot in my review from 2016, the watch looks good, and I enjoyed wearing it immensely, but it was just too tall. When Tudor switched from ETA 2824s to their in-house calibers, they gained a lot of credibility in the industry, and unfortunately, about 2 millimeters in case height. And while 14.8 millimeters isn't unheard of for a diver, given the towering, polished, slab sides of the mid-case, the original Black Bay just felt tall, and frankly, a bit out of proportion. With the Black Bay 58, not only did they correct the height issue, they made a watch that fits a smaller wrist such as my own much better. A watch that looks and feels more like the classic Submariners the Black Bay line draws upon. And that's the other reason the 58 was such a showstopper. With the ever-increasing popularity of vintage watches and their ever-increasing prices, the desire for truer, vintage-inspired watches is at peak. I mean, it feels like 75% of the watches coming out these days, from small independents to big Swiss houses, are throwback designs in some respect. And no mark holds as much value to the vintage scene than the Submariner. So the Black Bay 58 is not just a Black Bay that feels more like a vintage sub, it also looks the part and satisfies an industry-wide itch. But smaller sounds a lot simpler of a change than it really is. The 58 is an entirely new platform with all new components from the dial to the bracelet, and most notably, an entirely new caliber. The MT5402 is what makes the 58 possible, and opens Tudor up to a lot of new things. As far as the specs go, the MT5402 is a COSC certified chronometer with 70-hour power reserve, silicone hairspring, free sprung balance, 27 joules, a frequency of 4 Hz, and a bidirectionally winding rotor. So the same as found in the 41mm Black Bay, but rather than 31.8 by 6.5 millimeters, it's 25.6 by 4.9 millimeters. That's a significant reduction, and brings all of the great specs mentioned before to a package that's just a touch larger than a 2824. Which makes me wonder if this is the movement that will finally end Tudor's reliance on ETA for good. But I'm not here to look in the future, I'm here to review the Black Bay 58. And not to make this the shortest review in history, but it's damn good. Like really, really good. The case is exactly what you want and expect from a Black Bay, just smaller. But not too small either, it still retains the rugged charm a sub or a Black Bay should have. The curves are the same, the finishing is exceptional, every line is sharp as a razor. There are differences though to the details and proportions. The lugs angle in more, getting thinner than the larger models do. The crown feels less exaggerated, though still comparatively big, and the colored crown tube is gone. That's a detail that never bothered me, but I won't miss it either. An interesting but subtle change is that the dial to bezel proportions have been tweaked. They increased the relative size of the dial to the bezel. This makes the watch read larger, as the size of the dial has a huge impact on the perceived size of a watch. But while the bezel size changed, the mechanism luckily remained the same. It's still 60 clicks, snappy and precise, and has this great feature where it sort of locks in place at the origin. By locks, I mean when turning the bezel around, it pops into place at 0-60, so you won't accidentally go past that point. It then takes a touch more effort to rotate it off that spot. This is just one of those details that goes to the overall high-end feel of the watch. As for the dial, once again, there are no surprises. This is the dial of the Black Bay Black, just scaled down. You have the classic sub layout with applied rose gold colored markers. They're filled with a custard colored lume that is just warm enough to hint at patina without looking fake or forced. And it glows very bright. Around the edge of the dial, you have a closed index and gold print, adding to that vintage gilded feel. The hands are still snowflake style, also in rose gold for that distinct Tudor look. And while the use of the snowflake hands with round markers used to annoy me, I've gotten used to it. The bezel insert is anodized aluminum and has the markings you'd expect, including a red triangle and lume pip at 0.60. This time, however, they went for gold markers. They've done this before in their two-tone models, but not full steel. It's a cool, stylish look. I love that Tudor went this direction for the first Black Bay 58. It emphasizes the more vintage feel and scale of the model, and also makes it seem a bit special. Like this version will be more collectible than others. Moving on, Tudor took their fantastic Rivet bracelet and made a 20mm version for the 58. This bracelet was a great addition to the Black Bay when introduced in 2016, so I was glad to see the 58 came with it from the beginning. Now measuring 16mm at the buckle, it looks and feels even more vintage. It still has that great step taper, clean brushing throughout, and riveted plate sides. They also continue to use screw bars for the removable links, making sizing the bracelet at home very easy to do. Now let's talk about how it wears. Basically everything mentioned up to this point is all well and good, but it's how it wears on the wrist that really matters. The 58 is just about perfect on my 7-inch wrist, like it was tailor-made for me, which is something I think a lot of people will feel. And it's thin, or at least thinner. 11.9mm is a great height for a sport watch. It errs on the side of being slim, but retains a sporty tool watch feel, allowing the watch to slip under your sleeve with ease. And it just makes the watch comfortable to wear, as the 58 is a watch you won't feel like taking off. Lastly, in being smaller, the 58 reads more like a classic Submariner. Vintage subs, or even just older subs, such as those from the 90s, were not too small. They never were undersized, and that adds to their appeal today. The 58 wears more like these earlier models, or actually a touch smaller, as the bezel is less aggressive and there are no crown guards, making the case read as narrower. Like I said before, the 41 version also wears well, but it's a modern, bold interpretation of a sub. The 58 is just true to form. So what's left to say? It's clear Tudor did a good job with the Black Bay 58. They made the watch enthusiasts want, and that normal people will likely enjoy as well. One thing I've yet to mention though is the price, which is $3,575 on the bracelet. So it's actually a touch less expensive than the larger model as well. We've seen other big brands like Baume & Mercier, IWC, Omega, and Panerai all introduce sub $5,000 watches with in-house movements in the last year or two. But with the Black Bay 58 being closer to $3,000 than $5,000, Tudor continues to offer the best value. As for the future, it's likely Tudor will expand the collection greatly. This means more options, obviously, but perhaps also better pre-owned prices on this first version, which is sort of a win-win if you have some patience. For my taste, this model with its reserved use of gold might always be my favorite, so I'm just waiting for the right time to pick one up. If you enjoyed this review, hit the thumbs up below and subscribe to our channel. Also be sure to check out the full written review on wornandwound.com. See you next time.